Hello there. Good to see you again. I did a whole series of videos and continue to do videos on badass black women. But that doesn't appeal to everyone. So if you want to learn the true history of our country and not feel as though all white people are terrible, I got you. I have a whole slew of heroes and heroines, white people who actually deserve statues and plaques. For hundreds of years in the US, there has been an effort to censor history. That is not new, to edit out the parts we don't like and give it all a happy ending. This has been happening since at least the era of Reconstruction, when Southerners were successful in crafting a completely false narrative. And then Northerners embraced that narrative and even added on to it by pretending the Civil War was fought to free all slaves. It wasn't. So when we decide to tear down a statue of Robert E. Lee, for example, people object because he's been falsely built up as this great general and a hero and a moral man, and he was none of those things. One historian said, no single war figure stands in greater need of reevaluation than Lee. Just because he wasn't a monster doesn't mean he was a role model. He was a deeply flawed human being, like we all are. He was an alcoholic, pretty incompetent military strategist, and of course, an enslaver who said that the subjugation of blacks was necessary. He had good qualities, he had bad. But when we tear down those statues because we've decided that venerating kidnappers and enslavers is not a moral or ethical choice, we're not insulting white people. We're saying that particular white person represents something awful. There are so many people, white people in US history, who stood on the right side of history, who risked their lives and sometimes gave their lives to stand up for the right things. And in the days ahead, I'll profile a whole slew of white people who deserve to be role models. I don't have a lot of good things to say about most of my white forebears. My great grandfather was an enslaver and a rapist. Maybe you have similar things in your background, but there are plenty of admirable white ancestors that I can point to with pride and say they are my history too. They are Americans and they did the right thing. So we'll start with this dude here, Robert Carter III, born fabulously wealthy in Virginia in 1726. And note there that date, half a century before the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Carter was part of what was called at the time the First Families of Virginia. He and his wife had 17 children, though 5 of them died before reaching adulthood. He was admitted to the bar in 1751 and then appointed to serve on the Virginia Governor's Council. His loyalty to the king weakened a lot, and he tried to retire from public life. He refused to swear allegiance to the crown, and though he officially remained neutral, he actually supplied both weapons and provisions to the Revolutionary Army. So the British repeatedly raided his plantations. His great-grandfather actually freed all the slaves owned by the family and gave them land and livestock. Then Virginia made it illegal to free African Americans. Robert Carter III was given an enslaved girl as a gift when he was just 3 months old. And by the time he reached adulthood, he enslaved 100 black people on his forced labor camp and owned about 6,500 acres. He then converted to the Baptist faith, and he came to believe that slavery was immoral. This scandalized society. He scandalized society by joining an integrated church. Twice, a religious service he attended was attacked by armed mobs. In August of 1791, he announced his plan to free all of the enslaved workers. Although that took a lot of time, there were a lot of laws pertaining to manumission in Virginia, and he had to pay fees for each person that he freed. He was shunned by society and by his own son. He refused to relocate the African Americans that he freed. Instead, he offered to pay them wages if they would continue working for him. He even leased land to them so they could farm on their own, and that was something that really enraged his neighbors. He eventually fled to Baltimore, and the church that he'd attended in Virginia, the Integrated Church, was burnt to the ground. He spent the last 10 years of his life focused on legally freeing all of the enslaved people who belonged to his family. He loaned money to the city of Baltimore to build the city hall. When he died, his financial manager continued his work of freeing people. Sadly, if you do a search for his name, Robert Carter III, he's labeled simply as American slave owner. But he was a lot more than that. So, A white person who was on the right side of history, worthy of admiration, Robert Carter III. Have a great day, and as always, be kind.